It's 11 a.m. in Washington, and according to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, talks on raising the debt ceiling will resume this morning. He told reporters earlier that he feels negotiations have been productive. However, both sides remain at an impasse. Republicans are demanding spending cuts, and McCarthy says he won't bring a clean bill to raise the debt limit to the House floor. Anne-Marie is at the touchscreen with a look at what the demands are and the potential impacts on the economy.
Yeah, we keep hearing about cuts. Here's what we're really talking about. The largest piece of the discretionary spending cuts, Republicans want to slash the upcoming federal budget back to 2022 levels. And then they want to limit the budget growth to 1% per year for the next decade. So the GOP specifically, though, excluded military spending from the proposed cuts and stated that they would not impact Social Security and Medicare, which means every other agency would need some sizable cuts to make up for that, right? In letters submitted to Congress, agency heads outlined major impacts from a theoretical 22% budget cut. The FBI said that it would need to lay off 11,000 employees. Pell Grants would fall by $1,000, and 80,000 students would lose eligibility altogether. And 1.2 million poor Americans with young children would lose food assistance. Those wouldn't be the only changes to social assistance programs either. Republicans want to implement Medicaid work requirements and stricter prerequisites for food assistance. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that Medicaid work requirements would result in 2.2 million adults losing coverage. Leaders in Washington have a little more than a week until June 1st, the day the Treasury has warned that the U.S. could default. So they need to get to work. Some Democrats are suggesting that President Biden, could invoke the 14th Amendment if they can't reach a deal. Well, yesterday, our senior White House correspondent, Weijia Jiang, asked the White House press secretary all about this.
Has the White House determined that there's not enough time to invoke the 14th Amendment?
So, look, the 14th Amendment, as I've been saying, doesn't solve our problems. Congress must act. The president actually has said that multiple times. And understandably, the president gets it, right? He knows that any action needs to be strongly supported by the law.
So as the threat of a default looms, some GOP lawmakers are putting the blame on Democrats. Here's what Republican Congressman Chip Roy said about the matter on America Decides last night.
We're not going to default unless President Biden chooses to for some strange reason, because we have plenty of cash to pay off the interest that we owe. Everybody knows that. This is a false crisis that the president has manufactured. So I'm not worried about it in the slightest bit. Happy to talk to my Democratic colleagues if they're ever actually serious about fiscal restraint. But they're not. They just want to talk about supposedly raising taxes.
And earlier, I asked our chief White House correspondent, Nancy Cordes, if Speaker McCarthy would be able to sell a deal to his own party if he came to an agreement with the president.
The Freedom Caucus, of which Congressman Roy is a member, has gone public with its stance, which is that it is not going to support any deal that doesn't look exactly like the Republican opening salvo, this bill that the House Republicans passed last month. So essentially what the Freedom Caucus is saying is that their opening bid in negotiations has to be the closing bid, too, and they won't accept anything less. Now, when I asked Congressman Roy about that last night, he hedged. He said he's not going to negotiate in public. He left open the possibility that he might support the compromise after all. But I think the bottom line here is that the House Speaker cannot count on getting those Freedom Caucus votes. And so he needs Democratic votes to get this across the finish line, which is why this has to be a bipartisan compromise at the end of the day.